Okay, we'll start with this. Well, I'm sure most of you have heard by now that Rachael Ball, who was supposed to take on Shannon Courtenay in April, early April, has fallen ill. She has contracted the COVID-19 virus. According to Rachael, she actually contracted the virus sometime in January. Here in March, as a result of contracting the virus, she is still unfit to fight. And as a result of that, Australia's own Ebony Bridges is going to be standing in her place. She will be taking on Shannon Courtenay in April instead of Rachael.
It's unfortunate.
Bittersweet is the best way to describe my sentiments in reference to this revelation.
That's it.
In the build-up of this news, I had no idea, as there was no indication that Rachael Ball had fallen ill.
Shit, I thought the fight was still on.
Up until yesterday, when news broke that Ebony was going to be standing in for Rachael because Rachael is still exhibiting symptoms. Understand that, according to Rachael, she contracted the virus sometime in January, and a full month, a little over 2 months later, she's still exhibiting symptoms in March. Thus, she was unable to prepare for the April match with Shannon. We wish Rachael Ball a speedy recovery, as speedy as possible, given the circumstances. And with that, we have Courtenay versus Bridges to look forward to, a fight I've wanted to see for a while. For the most part, the fight itself is getting a positive reaction. For the most part, there is enthusiasm and people want to see it. There are a couple of critics.
Those people.
They don't think that either Shannon Courtenay or Ebony Bridges, they don't think that these fighters should be fighting for a world title of any kind. They're using this fight as an example of how some divisions in the sport of women's boxing lack depth.
That's what the critics are saying.
I won't lie to you. I don't think that either Shannon Courtenay or Ebony Bridges are in the same place experience-wise as some of the other champions in this division, as the other champions in this division have a lot more pro experience than either Shannon or Ebony. I won't lie to you that I don't think these two fighters are ready to take on those world champions, regardless of who wins the fight between them. I won't lie to you.
They ain't ready for Maria Cecilia Roman.
Or Julihan Luna, or Daniela Bermudez. Those three world champions are in a very different place in their careers than the winner of this fight will be, whether the winner is Ebony Bridges or Shannon Courtenay. That's basically saying that whoever ends up on top,
regardless of who it is,
they still won't have the same level of experience that all the other world titleists at this weight have. Thus, they won't be prepared to unify immediately after.
But I never expected them to.
I choose to look at the situation through rose-tinted glasses. I figured that regardless of who wins the Courtenay versus Ball fight, they're likely going to fight Ebony Bridges. The situation has changed since then. Now it's Bridges versus Courtenay in April, and I'm expecting that the winner of that fight is going to take on Rachael Ball. I mean, I choose to see the silver lining in all of this, that this is an excellent fight. This is a fight that I wanted to see. It's an evenly matched contest between two fighters that are in a very similar place in their careers. That's the lens. That's the filter I choose to see this situation in.
Should it be for a world title?
Perhaps not, but it's nothing to fret over, nothing to lose sleep about, because I told you guys in the build-up of this weekend's action.
I told you.
Down there in Australia, in the land down under, where Ebony Bridges is from, Shotgun Shannon O'Connell was going to be taking on Shanika Johnson. Shotgun Shannon O'Connell has emerged the victor in that fight, and Shotgun Shannon O'Connell is more experienced than Shannon Courtenay, more experienced than Ebony Bridges, obviously more experienced than Shanika Johnson, who she won a decision against. Shotgun Shannon is now the WBA Gold Champion, and in becoming the WBA Gold Champion, she is in line to fight for the full version of the title. So maybe Shannon don't deserve the opportunity, and maybe Ebony doesn't deserve it either. Ultimately, time will tell the story.
The best talent's going to permeate to the top.
It always does. Rachael Ball is described as a better fighter than both Shannon Courtenay and Ebony Bridges in some circles. Perhaps when the winner of this fight emerges, they'll move on from this fight and take on Rachael. Maybe it ends up being Ebony Bridges versus Rachael Ball. Or maybe, this is just a postponement. Maybe Shannon's going to beat Ebony, and then Shannon will move on to have that rematch with Rachael. And then, the winner of that fight might end up fighting Shotgun Shannon O'Connell in defense of the full title.
So how's that for depth?
If you want to know what I think, and you're here, so I'll assume that you do, maybe it is a little early for Shannon and Ebony to be fighting for a world title. Maybe it is, but it's not the end of the world, and depending on the sequence, the critics are going to get the depth of competition that they're always griping about. The winner of this fight, in all likelihood, is going to take on Rachael Ball. And the winner of that fight, in all likelihood, is going to take on the very experienced and dangerous Shotgun Shannon O'Connell, who has just dished out 3 losses to 3 unbeaten fighters in her last 6 professional fights. Whoever ends up on top once this round robin is over, this round robin between Rachael, Shannon, and Ebony, whoever the last woman standing is, they're likely going to have to contend with Shotgun Shannon O'Connell. And it's not just Shotgun Shannon they got to worry about. They also have to worry about the UK's own Lisa Whiteside, an unbeaten fighter that comes from a very good amateur background. She's already expressed enthusiasm, interest in facing Ebony Bridges in the past. I've no doubts. Once this round robin is over, between that trio of girls, Lisa Whiteside's going to want the winner.
So look, I can't complain.
It's very hard for me to be negative about this entire situation when Courtenay versus Bridges is a fight I've wanted to see for some time now.
It is.
Title or no world title. Credit has to go to Ebony Bridges for being as business savvy as she has been, capitalizing on most any and every opportunity to put herself at the forefront of the sport, put herself in power positions to make things happen, because Ebony don't even got a lot of fights, and she doesn't have a major promoter behind her, but look at where she's gotten herself to thus far, with only, 5 professional fights under her belt? You gotta give the lady credit.
Don't hate the player, hate the game.
Won't lie to you, I very much like this fight. I like the sequence of fights that could take place once this is over. The winner of this fight will likely take on Rachael Ball, move on from fighting Rachael Ball to potentially fighting Shotgun Shannon, assuming they don't lose to Rachael. I mean, in a nutshell, this could herald a lot more attention for the 118-pound division, and this is the start of it. A division that is otherwise overlooked. All the focus really is on the super featherweight division right now. Terry Harper, Maiva Hamadouche, Michaela Mayer, Hyun Mi Choi. You know, that's the division everybody's talking about right now. But this could be the start of more attention going to the 118-pound division as well. So look, I can't complain, even if you do, even if you want to. I don't.
I won't.
Look for this in April 10th, on the undercard of Conor Benn versus Samuel Vargas. I'm looking forward to it. In other news, per tweet from Michael Benson, the WBA have temporarily suspended judge Carlos Sucré after he scored Juan Estrada versus Roman Gonzalez 117-111 in Estrada's favor last night. WBA President Gilberto Mendoza confirmed, "I do not detract from the champion, but in close fights, such a large score is intolerable." This isn't the first time the WBA have done something like this. I vaguely recall in the first Ryota Murata versus Hassan Endam fight, the scoring in the fight was shocking, and those judges were suspended. As a result of that, a rematch was ordered between Ryota Murata and Hassan Endam. We all know that Murata went on to order the rematch.
When?
Will that happen here? I'm not sure, because short of an order like that,
Short of it.
I don't see how suspending Carlos Sucré reconciles the wrong that happened here. Granted that a judge like Carlos Sucré shouldn't be allowed to score professional boxing matches if that much of the fight went over his head, if he saw it as a lopsided win for Juan Francisco Estrada. No, the guy shouldn't be allowed to judge fights anymore, but unless the WBA is going to go and order a fight, a rematch, a rubber match essentially, a trilogy between Juan and Chocolatito, the most we can say is that the damage is done. The damage has been done to Chocolatito's professional record in a fight that most people think he won. The very popular YouTube channel, ES News, Ali Sekbak, reporting, he took a poll post-fight as far as who does the boxing community at large, who do his subscribers think won the fight? And out of 50,000 people that decided to participate, 50,000 people that decided to vote, 50,000 people and counting, 64% of the 50,000 think Chocolatito won the fight. Juan Francisco Estrada was quoted as saying that he thought the fight was a draw. He thought that before the judges' scorecards were read, before the judges' scorecards were tallied. That's even more indication that the scoring here simply won't do, and that the scoring here could have very well costed Roman Gonzalez his world title unjustly, because if Juan Estrada himself said that he thought the fight was a draw and Carlos Sucré has been suspended for his lopsided scorecard, at minimum what you can see is that Chocolatito might have a loss on his record that doesn't even belong there. And that loss is why he's not in possession of the WBA title here today.
If the fight was scored a draw, then he'd still be a champion.
He'd still have his world title, and he'd have a draw on his record as opposed to a loss. I can't stress this enough. I didn't see a fight where Chocolatito lost.
I didn't.
And as it turns out, a lot of people didn't see a fight where Chocolatito lost. If you want to say the fight was close, you can say that. If you want to say that you scored it a draw, okay, I'll take a draw. But what I won't take is 117-111 in favor of Juan Estrada.
No way.
And unless the WBA is going to go as far as ordering a rematch for that WBA title, unless that's what they're prepared to do,
Is it?
this is just a formality that services no real purpose. I mean, granted that Carlos Sucré should be suspended, and he shouldn't be allowed to judge fights. It's a temporary suspension, you understand? Not a permanent one, but the damage is permanent.
That loss is staying on Choco's record, isn't it?
At the end of this confab that the WBA is going to have with Carlos Sucré, this evaluation, at the end of this, will the WBA title be returned to Chocolatito depending on Carlos Sucré's answer, depending on what the WBA decides to do? Will that be the end result? Because if it isn't,
If it ain't,
then this whole confab ain't about a goddamn thing. It's just a fancy way of saying you're going to get Carlos to explain himself, but no matter what he says, it's not going to change anything.
what's the point?
In an ideal world, what the WBA would do, in an ideal world, is not only suspend Carlos Sucré for an extended period of time due to his ineptitude, his very wide scorecard that in no way, shape, or form reflects the contest that took place on Saturday night. Not only would you suspend this guy in an ideal world, but you'd order a rematch between Juan Estrada and Chocolatito. That's what you do. And if Juan Estrada is non-compliant with this order as a result of the controversial scorecard, then the title goes back to Chocolatito, where it belongs. Because at minimum, you have to say that Choco didn't lose that night. Call it a close fight. Call it a draw. But don't sit here and tell me that Chocolatito lost the WBA title to Juan Estrada in that fight on that night. That is unacceptable.
They should order a third fight.
And I know what you're thinking. Juan Francisco Estrada can't have a third fight with Chocolatito because he has a WBC mandatory waiting for him in Sorun Visai. He's got to have a third fight with that guy. Well, that's just Juan Francisco's fucking problem now, isn't it? That's Juan's problem, the WBC's problem, and Sor's problem. What we're talking about here is what the WBA should do. They should order a fight between Juan and Chocolatito. And if Juan doesn't comply, we all know that he won't because he's got something else to do.
Right.
If he doesn't comply, then the title should go back to its rightful owner, Chocolatito, who didn't lose on Saturday night. In an ideal world, that would be the order. That would be the sequence of events.
Suspending Carlos Sucré is only doing half the job.
If I'm being honest, I don't even consider it half. I'd say suspending Carlos Sucré is only a third of the job because it's a temporary suspension after all. What happens once this quote-unquote evaluation is over? Is Carlos Sucré going to continue judging boxing matches?
What about righting the wrong to Chocolatito?
If Carlos Sucré's ineptitude was enough that the WBA wants to evaluate him,
Right?
get him to explain what the hell he was thinking. If his ineptitude was enough to cause this entire controversy, then why should Chocolatito have to pay the price for it? Clearly this guy didn't do his job. Even you guys are acknowledging that.
They should order a rematch.
And before you go telling me that's a stupid idea, hey, genius, that's what they did with Ryota Murata and Hassan Endam. And just in keeping with the theme of this weekend's action, Eddie Hearn was quoted as saying, "It makes me a little bit sick to have paid Yildirim more than Estrada." He's quoted as saying, "Sometimes I pay a fighter. I'll give you an example. Yildirim," Hearn said during a post-fight press conference following Estrada's split decision win on Saturday night, right?
Right.
So I pay Yildirim. Yildirim got more than Juan Estrada, right? And it makes me a little bit sick, right? But then I watch the Estrada-Gonzalez rematch, and I think those guys should get more money. Do you know what I mean? But it's not charity. It's a business. So it depends how many people want to watch the fight. More people want to see the third fight. So, listen, Estrada has Sor Rungvisai. He has Kazuto Ioka. He has Jerwin Ancajas. And he has Roman Gonzalez. He has options. I can't speak on behalf of Juan and Latin sports, but I believe that he was very happy with his purse tonight, said Hearn, whose company co-promotes Estrada. But you know, fighters always want more money. We have this conversation a lot at the moment. There's a lot of women fighters who also campaign for higher purses. Really, the value of the product represents the value of the purse, okay? So the money that a fight generates reflects on the purse that a fighter is paid. It doesn't matter about their weight class. It doesn't matter about their sex. It doesn't matter about their race. It matters about subscriptions, ticket sales, the commercial interest from broadcasters. So the smaller weight classes, now, I don't know what Juan Estrada received for the first fight with Gonzalez, but I'd like to think he made 10 times more tonight for the second fight. And I'm sure his manager will be asking for more for the third fight. You know what I mean? Yeah, mucho dinero.
This goes back to what I told you before.
Equal pay in men's or women's boxing. It doesn't exist because all the fighters are not paid equally, whether we're talking about the boys or the girls. Should Avni Yildirim have actually gotten a bigger purse than Juan Estrada, given the uninspiring performance he put on? No, but he did.
And he did because of the man opposite the ring.
He did because a mandatory challenger is due a certain percentage of the overall pot, and he did because the man opposite the ring of him was Canelo Alvarez, the biggest draw in boxing in this part of the world. Fighting Canelo is going to get you a huge purse whether you deserve it or not.
And it's because of the business that he drums up.
It's because of the revenue that he generates and the interest associated with every single one of his fights, even if it's a fight with Avni Yildirim. That is the kind of audience Canelo Alvarez commands.
That's what makes that kind of purse possible for Avni.
So when we talk about equal pay in women's boxing, equal to men's boxing, what needs to be understood is that equal pay, there's no such thing as equal pay. All the men aren't paid equally. Hell, some of the men aren't even paid on merit.
They're not.
What do you think Showtime gave Adrian Broner for that Santiago fight where Adrian Broner didn't even make the weight? How much money did they fritter on him that they didn't want to give to Clarissa Shields?
No such thing as equal pay.
And what needs to be understood is that the issue facing women's boxing is a marketing issue. Thus, it's the marketing that has to change, that has to improve, so that the purses can then improve.